already reached the enemy and it's time to ambush the enemy. So they're at the point of contact. Ighara, to ambush or to attack the enemy or to be right on top of him. And by using that for the horses, what we're learning is the horses delivered the rider, who's the actual ahl of the horse, the actual rider, the owner of the horse. They took him right on top of the enemy. So the enemy is like on the ground, and this guy's with a spear above him, literally hovering over him. And that's the image captured by the word al-mughirat. أي التي تغير على العدو وقت الصباح. This is the other meaning of the word subha at the end. This is what's called maf'ul fihi and dharf zaman. They ambush the enemy in the morning time, subhan. Now what is this? What's the benefit of Allah saying they ambush the enemy in the morning time? If you know anything about ambushing and attacking, and these Arabs were basically bandits. The people being described here are bandits. Some mufassirun say this is talking about the Sahaba in battle. This is wrong on a couple of accounts, and the counter-argument by mufassirun is stronger. Why? First, it's a Makki surah, so there's no battle. That's the first thing. The second issue is the Sahaba, if they were, this was describing the Sahaba in battle, then the subject of the oath would have to do with the believers. But the subject of the oath has to do with disbelievers. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ. It doesn't have to do with believers, it has to do with disbelievers. So it's a discontinuous kind of argument to think that this is from the Sahaba. But I should tell you what mentality that comes from, why that opinion even exists. It exists because among the Mufassirun there was a widely held opinion that became popular. It's not really necessarily based on any direct evidence, but it's an opinion that became popular. What's that evidence? If Allah swears by something, it must be sacred. If Allah swears by something, it must be something holy, or something righteous, or something good, or something pure, or something noble or honorable. But the counter-argument is that may or may not be the case. The primary thing is Allah is making a point by the object. The point will be made in the subject. That's the actual fundamental principle. This overshadows the other principle of saying the object may or may not be sacred, if you follow. Okay? Now, فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. They ambush the enemy at what time? Subh. And this, I want to tell you a couple more things about the word al-ighara. يُقَالُ أَغَارَ يُغِيرُ إِغَارَةً إِذَا بَاغَتْ عَدُوَّهُ بِقَتْلٍ. The word ighara is used when you go against the enemy, when this band goes against the enemy with the intent to kill. أَوْ أَسَرْ أَوْ نَهَبْ. Or to attack them secretly, or to rob them and pillage them. So these are all crimes. The word is used for criminal behavior, which is another reason why we wouldn't use it for the Sahaba. So this, more linguistic evidence is why the tafsir is pointing in one direction. Then of course, because the ism fa'il, the active participle is used, وَأَسْنَدَ الْإِغَارَةَ إِلَيْهَا, the use of the noun, Allah attributed ighara as a noun to them. When a noun is used in Arabic, it means whatever you're talking about is known for that quality. So what we're saying then is the horses are known for running really fast. They are known that whenever they run, sparks fly. And they are known, these horses are known for being bandits and attacking the enemy. And they are also famous for doing that at what time? In the morning. Subhan. But if you know anything about attacking and robbing and pillaging, then you know the best time to do that is not the morning. The best time to do that is at night. When the enemy doesn't know where you came from, where you left. You can use the cloak of darkness to your advantage. But these guys over here that are being talked about, they don't care. They're attacking at what time? In the morning. Which is particularly, it adds a couple of interesting nuances to this discussion. How so? The first thing to note is in the morning there's a lot of moisture. Things are wet. Even the rocks and the ground, there's a lot of drops of water on it. But even though it's wet, what is flying anyway? Sparks are flying anyway. It becomes even more of a contradiction in the scene. That how fast are these horses running that even the water evaporates immediately and turns into sparks of flames. SubhanAllah. فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. Then here what I want to share with you is the two words in Arabic basically that are used for attacking. This is one of those words. Aghara, to attack and ambush. Another word that's used in the Quran is satwa. Sin, ta, and waw. Satwa. For example, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, يَكَادُونَ يَسْطُونَ بِالَّذِينَ يَتْلُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِنَا. But more on that when we get to that ayah one day. Ighara in Arabic from a linguistic origin means to go deep into something. Like if somebody goes deep into the countryside, they leave and they go deep into the boonies. Like if we go from here to Plano, right? If we go way out there, or we go to Mansfield or something. I have to knock on Mansfield. I have a friend in Mansfield. Anyway, so you go out all the way out there or something. The word you will use in Arabic for that is, aghar al-faras or aghar al-rajul, which means the man went way deep. And by using that word for ambush, what we're learning is they don't just attack, they go deep into the lines of the enemy. They get into the heart of the town and attack them. Okay? So, فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. The other thing to note about morning is if you're attacking in the morning, it means you want the enemy to know you're coming. If you're attacking at night, you wanted the element of surprise. But if you're attacking in the morning, you want the enemy to know, and it's like you don't even care. Why don't you care? Because you're like wolves. You're not afraid of your prey. The wolf is running after a rabbit. It's not going to, it doesn't care. It's going to eat it anyway, right? It's not afraid of a battle. There's not going to be a contest. So this is the kind of confidence these riders and these raiders really have in the people they're about to attack. Now we get into the heart of the matter where the action begins. This was just preparation for the action. Now the action begins. And in action, a verb is used. So now there's, from a linguistics point of view, there's a transition from nouns. Al-ADIYAAT is a noun. Al-Muriyat is a noun. Al-Mughirat is a noun. But now فَأَثَرْنَا, that's a verb. So there's a transition from noun to verb, which means the action is intensifying. That's what that implies, okay? فَأَثَرْنَا. Then they cause, these horses they cause. That's the feminine plural, أَثَرْنَا, noon and niswa. It's used for the horses because عاديات is plural. So they cause something to rise. Athara in Arabic is to cause something to rise. What is it that they cause to rise? Naq'a. Naq'a in Arabic is one of three words in the Quran used for dust. There's ghabara, there's haba, like haba manthura, and then there's this word naq'a. Naq'a is used in Arabic when something is moving really fast, like a car or a caravan or even a horse. When something moves really fast in the dust, what rises behind it? A cloud of dust. It leaves a trail of dust. So even if it's gone, you could see some horse went by here because I still see the cloud of dust, right? That cloud of dust is called naq'a. It's not just any dust. It's specifically the dust that rises up in the air when something moves by in really fast motion. So these horses, they cause this cloud of dust to rise. But before we go further into the next ayah, we have to discuss the word bihi. فَأَثَرْنَا bihi naq'a. We talked a little bit about فَأَثَرْنَا. We talked about naq'a. They cause to rise. That's atharna. Naq'a is the cloud of dust that they're causing to rise. But the word we're missing in the middle is bihi. So what is that bihi? The pronoun he, it referring to. It could be referring to makan. For example, وَقِيلَ الْمَعْنَى فَأَثَرْنَا بِمَكَانِ عَدُوِّهِنَّ نَقْعًا. In other words, when they attack, when the fighting begins, there's so much action on the ground that dust is rising and you can't even see your enemy. So once the battle begins, it's completely covered and engulfed in dust. You can barely see in front of you in the chaos of battle. That's one implication of bihi. The second is, bihi could be referring to the morning. That even though it's morning and the sand is damp, when sand is damp and moist, it doesn't rise. But even though it's the morning, this is some intense battle that despite that, the dust is rising anyway. Or this bihi could be the qadh, meaning because of the striking of the horses, they're causing these clouds of dust to rise. Abu Ubaidah rahimahullah had an opinion about the word naq'a, which is a minor opinion, but it should be addressed, inshaAllah ta'ala. An-naq'u raf'u sawt. Naq'a in Arabic also means to elevate your voice, to raise your voice. The first meaning is a cloud of dust. But the second meaning also is to raise your voice. And the two are rhetorically connected in Arabic. Why? Because when you get lost in a cloud of dust, how do you get found? By raising your voice. You can't be seen anymore, so you can only be heard. By using that word rhetorically, another dimension added to this scene is these horses are in battle, dust everywhere, they're marching as fast as they can, sparks are flying, and now you hear screaming. Right? It's become even, an intense scene because of the use of the word naq'a, in addition to what it already was. Now we get to the final ayah of the oath, فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. Then they penetrate, wasat. Wasat in Arabic is to penetrate right to the middle of something. فَوَسَطْنَا, then these horses penetrate to the very middle. You know how in Surah Al-Baqarah Allah says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, same word is used, the middle nation. Same word is being used here. وَسَطْنَا in the verbal form. This is the feminine plural verbal form. And because of that battle, and because of that cloud of dust, using that to their advantage, they penetrate, all of them, wasatna is the feminine plural, so the entire group penetrates, all of them, bihi, using the advantage of the cloud of dust, jam'a, all together. So what we're learning here is something really incredible. You know, when you attack the enemy, especially if you know the enemy knows you're coming, the enemy's waiting with his spears. He sees the cloud of dust rising, he knows you're on the way. Because that scene has already been set. Now look at it from the camera angle of the enemy. He knows you're coming. He sees the sun rising, he sees the sparks, and he sees the cloud of dust. He could see you from a distance coming. When that's the case, you don't go all out against the enemy. You ever seen sort of a battlefield, even a mock battlefield? Even in video games they do this. You send the first wave, then you send the second wave. You don't throw all your forces in at once. That's suicide. You're going to get killed because you have no backup support left. Everybody went in. But first of all, we learned these are very few. Adiyat, the feminine plural, jam'u qilla, they're few. Second, we learned they all went in. They don't even care. They all went into the heart of the enemy. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ Actually, فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. They penetrated into the very gathering of the enemy. The word jam'a could be applied to the horses, these guys that are attacking. Jam'a could also be used for the enemy. Meaning they went right into the heart of the entire gathering. Now you can imagine, the enemy also has line 1, line 2, line 3. You know how soldiers stand in lines? And these guys, it's almost like they formed a spear and they penetrated right through those lines, crushing their way in. And where are they now? In the middle. And when they're in the middle, where's the enemy? Before the enemy was in front of them, but now when they're in the middle, where's the enemy? All around them. The enemy's all around them. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. Now, when I stop here, I wanted to give you some background about the word ba a little bit. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ. B could be transitivity, we said taking advantage of the dust. But also ba here could mean al-haliya, which means immediately as the dust cloud rises, immediately, there's no hesitation. They go right into the heart of the battle. Okay. After we said all of this, the Arab who is listening, no mention of stories of the prophets, no halal or haram, no day of judgment, no Allah is one, no accept the messenger, no why do you kill the baby daughter, why do you do this, why do you do that, nothing. No religious instruction at all for 5 ayat. All these ayat are doing their what? It's getting his attention. And it's talking about stuff he really wants to hear. And by the time you get in this trailer to where these guys are in the middle of the enemy and they're all around him, the Arab's eyes are bulging out. He's like, what happened next? And the screen turns black. Allah doesn't say any more. He's got his attention now, right? That's when he's got his full attention. Now it's a climactic moment. You want to know what happened next. That's what you want to know really badly. Now at that point, Allah says what He wanted to say all along. Had He said the agenda was not the object. Remember, the agenda is never the object. The agenda is the subject. Now Allah will present the subject. Now understand the difference between presenting the subject now and presenting the subject before. If you present the subject before, what's the disadvantage? Nobody's paying attention. But if you present the subject now, they're stop listening to everything else. If somebody's talking, they say, hey, listen to this, man. I'm trying to listen here. Right? Their full attention is gone this way. Now what does Allah Azza wa Jalla say to them? Before I tell you what He says, I want to tell you something more about what the Arab is thinking. The Arab loves the horse. Loves the horse. He loves the battle horse on top of that. On top of that, he loves the battle horse that's female because it's fast. On top of that, he loves the battle horse that is female and fast and is willing to risk its own life. For who? For the master. The Arabs used to make poetry about the horse all the time. في فرس نهد عتيق جعلته حجابا بالبيت ثم أخدمته عبدا. The poet makes poetry. He says, I have a beautiful horse. It is so exotic that I have placed for him a barrier so nobody can look at him, and I even hired a servant to take care of him. They love their horse. They make poetry about how obsessed they are with their horse. The way you talk about your car, I could put new rims on it, man. Right? I'll put a dual exhaust, or I put this system on it. Right? Their system is what? I put a new saddle on this guy, or whatever, right? They're obsessed with this horse. And these ayat are just talking about this horse. And this guy is appreciating, man, this horse is so loyal. When it's life and death, when the enemy's spear attacks, it doesn't hit me first. Who does it hit first? My horse. And if you know anything about animals, they have this crazy thing called animal instinct, which means when they see danger, what do? They run away. But this horse is so loyal to me, It's willing to give up its own survival, its own animal instinct for loyalty to me. Right? The Arab is appreciating the loyalty that his horse shows him. He's the master and the horse is a slave. And he shows loyalty. Allah says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُونَ. No doubt the human being is truly disloyal to his master. Allah says the human being is not loyal to his master at all, for sure. SubhanAllah. A second ago, this guy was thinking, man, how loyal that's the slave, I'm the master, and how loyal he is. And then Allah says, no, actually, you're a slave, and you have a master, and you're not very loyal at all. SubhanAllah. How the argument is constructed. How it's really a curveball that is thrown at this mushrik, from where he couldn't have imagined. It attacks him from where he couldn't have imagined. And it hits him really hard. And it doesn't hit him in here, it hits him in here. It hits him in his heart. Right? He can't even come up with like intellectual arguments now. No. Because he feels it at this point. When you feel something, you're left speechless. You're completely, utterly left speechless. And that's what Allah Azza wa Jalla does in this ayah. Let's talk a little bit about this word, kanud. Most mufassirun, they comment on this word and they say kanud ay kafur. Kanud means ungrateful. Mostly they say that it means ungrateful. Kafur lil ni'mah, ungrateful to the favor. Allah has given the human being so much. Allah has even given the human being ability over animals, and so much ability that they surrender themselves to Him. And Allah gave the human being this ability so he would obey Him on this earth. The human being's job was, he's given all these facilities. I'll give you intellect, I'll give you power over animals, I'll give you knowledge, I'll give you civilization, so you do what? You obey me. Allah gives you all this, and what does the Arab use all this for? To rob. Right? He gives you all these gifts, and what are you using them? To rob the other enemy, and when the robbing is being talked about, you're all into it too. Oh, man, this is getting good. So Allah Azza wa Jal basically used his false, deviated idea of, what should be elevated, what should be appreciated. And by the way, we do this too. In the movie industry, in the modern West, criminals are turned into heroes. Right? We're going to rob a bank, and we're going to make a movie about it. Or we're going to steal a few $1 million, and we're going to do, these are the, good actor. That's a great movie, man, the way they stole. Right? Or the way they committed zina, or whatever. Right? All the haram is glorified. It's glorified. Right? And we say, man, that was a great action movie. Right? They got those poor, hard-working people pretty good. This twisted sense of morality, Allah Azza wa Jalla uses it, entertains them with it, and then attacks them. When they were least expecting it, He attacks them and cuts off their moral foundation. Al-kanud ay huwa al-qata' aydan. We find Shawkani commenting, kanud also means cutting apart, to disassociate, to separate, meaning the human being separates himself from the mastery and the slavery to Allah. He disassociates himself. The horse doesn't disassociate himself from the rider, but the slave of Allah, this human being, he disassociates himself from his master. SubhanAllah. But then I want to share with you the difference. Arabic is really, the beauty of the Arabic language is when you look at words that are the same meaning and you discover what makes them different. So if the ulama say that kanud is like kafur, exceedingly ungrateful, that's what they have in common. But what do they have that's different? What do they have that's different? Why is that even more important? Let me tell you. Inna al-insana. The ayah begins, Inna al-insana. Now listen to these other places. In Surah Ibrahim he says, Inna al-insana la-zalumun kaffar. In Surah Al-Hajj, Inna al-insana la-kafur. In Surah Al-Shura, فَإِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ كَفُورٌ. In Surah Al-Zukhruf, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَكَفُورٌ مُبِينٌ. Then, so in all of these ayat, what did you hear? Kanud or kafur? Kafur, kafar, kafur, kafur, kafur. And there's one place in Quran where instead of saying kafur, what does he say? Kanud. So there's a difference. If it was the same thing, that word has been used elsewhere too. So what makes this word special? What's different about kafur than kanud? Once again, what do these two words have in common? To be ungrateful. That's what they have in common. But let's go further. This is a special type of ingrate, kanud. First of all, this is sighatul mubalagha, so it's extremely ungrateful. It's not just ungrateful, it's extremely ungrateful. How do we know that? Because of the waw. In kanud, this is sighatul mubalagha. Okay? One who remembers and makes only mention of the problems and complaints and never makes mention of favors. That's the kind of person that's called kanud. So when you ask a person, how's life? And what do they remember? All their problems. And what don't they accept? all the good things that are happening to them. Like for example, you ask, how's marriage? Ah, man, she's got problems, she doesn't listen, she does this, she does that. You